Hey there, and welcome to our podcast series designed to help leaders teach through the book God's Story here at Impact Church. I'm John.
I'm Judy.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Mike.
So in session 1, we talked about creation. Now in session 2, it's all about the fall. And the book does a really good job of summarizing the fall with just a short phrase, and that is, seeking to be wise, they became fools. So Mike, what are some top teaching tips for this kind of sad turn of events in God's story?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, you have to understand the content. As a teacher, you're a learner first, right? So just making sure that you've read through the material and you have a good grasp of it. And you have a good grasp of the biblical story, the creation, fall, redemption, restoration, and that this really is about God's design and how and why God made us. He made us in his image. And we're to rule over his creation as his image bearers. So he gives us all the attributes that we have in the first chapter, right? We have the ability to think and reason, and we have relational capacity, like God himself is relational within the Trinity. So there's so many aspects of, you have to understand how we're created, then to understand, well, what we did was we rebelled against our creator for why we're here. And instead of going to him for wisdom, we went to the fruit. It's not that God didn't want us to have knowledge of good and evil. He did. It's just he didn't want us to get it from another source. So throughout the Bible, there's these testings. God is allowing us to be tested. And the first test is that tree in the middle of the garden. He didn't have to put a tree in the middle of the garden. He said, you can eat from all the trees, but don't eat from the tree in the middle of the garden. And it was a test to see, are you going to trust me?
Yeah.
Get your wisdom and knowledge from me? Or are you going to get it for yourself independently of me? So understand the story so that then you can help other people who you're discipling understand the story too. Because you can't understand how we fit into it until you understand it. What is the it that we fit into,
So as a leader, it sounds like it's critical to make sure there's a firm foundation in the Imago Dei and Missio Dei
Right.
before you dive into the fall. Is that?
Yeah, because the fall is from this perfect image bearer of God, designed to take that creation that God made in Eden and to take that to the ends of the earth. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and do what? Subdue it. So it's taking the good creation that God makes from good to great, because why would we have to subdue the earth and all of the creatures and all the things around the earth if there wasn't work to be done, if it wasn't so we always think original creation was in a perfect state. Well, it was in a good state. Eden was in a perfect state, but we were to take Eden and go global with it, right? That's really the picture. And so the fall is just this devastation of, how are we going to even do that now? How are we going to take the goodness of God and take Eden and spread Eden all over this planet?
Franchising Eden.
Exactly. So the fall is just this moment of, the first walk of shame. They're escorted out of the garden, and you're not taking Eden anywhere. You're shut off from Eden.
Yeah.
You can't even go into it anymore. So it's not until God comes to dwell with them in the tabernacle and all that we see God's presence on earth with humans again. And the whole sacrificial system is so that they could be in his presence and create this clean space like they had in Eden prior to the fall. So God's desire has always been to dwell with humans on earth and be with us in this project of making Eden global, right? So making earth great again. So
Oh,
I'm going to get you a hat, buddy.
we
What
should get a
color?
hat, I think.
making Eden
Green for
Mega.
Eden.
Not to be confused.
Please.
yeah. So yeah, my first encouragement to leaders is just meditate on the story, get to know it and love it and throw yourself into it. It's like, what went wrong? Now, how can I help somebody else through the Socratic method, through asking good questions? How could I help them feel that impact of it went wrong. It went bad. What was intended to be this good thing that humans would take and just create with it an amazing earth. Now, we still have the image of God, so we still see humans. We've multiplied, we filled the earth, and we can make amazing things out of technology and build hospitals and orphanages. We can do all these amazing things as humans, but we could also build bombs and create chemical warfare and do all these terrible things too with that image of God, because it's broken, it's bent, it's twisted. So I know I'm just kind of going on and on, but we can go on and on about this topic. So I would just say meditate on it, think about the fall, think about what got broken, and then how you can draw somebody else out and ask good questions, helping them to get that aha themselves.
When we talked about just the Socratic method of teaching, it was prep. What are the three most important things in real estate is location, location, location. For the Socratic method, you really got to prepare, right?
Yeah. Know your stuff.
Yeah.
So it's content and process. Those are the two things we're going to just keep coming back to every week. Content is what's in the book, God's story. Most importantly, what's in the scriptures. So what's the content? What are we trying to help walk people through? And we're trying to summarize the entire biblical narrative in 4 movements: creation, fall, redemption, restoration. And the third week, especially when we get to that, that's a longer week, because you're going through the whole narrative of the Bible and tracking that story of redemption, all the way from the promise to Eve to its fulfillment in Jesus, and then pointing towards that full restoration that is going to come.
What do you guys think are some good questions to a leader could use to a group to determine if there is solid belief systems or not? Are there some sample questions we could offer up to leaders to say, hey, consider this?
Yeah, well, you start simple. I would say in the first week, just ask them, what do you think it means to be made in God's image? And again, we talked about this last time. Are you having your group read? Or the person or people that you're leading through this process, are they reading prior to your discussion? Are you reading it for the first time with them? You have to think about, who am I discipling? What makes the most sense for this relationship or this group? And so if they're reading the material, you're checking for comprehension. So you're asking questions like, when you read this, did you understand? If they're reading it for the first time with you and you're just reading snippets, you can say, well, how does this hit you? Have you ever heard this before? Is this new information to you? So you're just asking basic understanding questions. So you as the Socratic leader have to determine what makes the most sense for the people or person that I'm leading, and how we're going about this. So if that makes sense. So
I think even bigger picture up front, in the beginning of God's story, just asking a simple question like, what's the gospel to you guys? How do you understand the gospel? How would you explain the gospel to somebody, and giving them an opportunity to share? And usually in that context, you see most people camp out on not as much creation and God's image bearing, and not even as much restoration of God's image in us and restoration of right relationship with the Lord. But we focus in more on fall and redemption, right? That we're sinners and Christ died to save us and redeem us. And so in that, Jesus died on the cross for my sins. Like that's the
And we're
the
going
gospel.
to heaven.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
end of story.
End of story, period. Yeah. So even opening up questions like that of just explain it as you understand it, and then it gives you a starting point to be able to unpack some of the story.
Good.
I like that.
So last session, we heard the Mike Johnson thought process for a icebreaker.
Always scary.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to
That's what I
get.
said.
It's like a box of chocolates. So I was thinking, if you guys agree, that it might be worthwhile, maybe for the first 3 or 4 sessions, to hear that same thought process for an icebreaker that is applicable to the topic at hand. Because as a leader, just hearing how you think about how can we get everybody involved in something that's very it's not aggressive, it's not challenging anybody, it's something that people deal with.
People talking.
Yeah,
right?
just get some talking.
Yeah.
So what do you think for the...
If you were an animal, what kind? Not that?
What's your favorite
Probably-
breakfast cereal?
That was last
That's seventh
session, 'cause
grade.
that was
Seventh
creation.
grade ice
You were an
Creation.
animal.
You're an animal.
No, yeah. So last week we talked about. So we're trying to get the conversation started about creation, right? And what does a creation reveal? Reveal something about a creator. So the icebreaker was something like, favorite artist. You know, do you have a favorite artist, and what do you know about that artist? Why is that your favorite? What does it show you about that artist from what they've created, right? So in the fall, you're trying to get people to have an emotional connection to something that they loved and was in their possession, and it was awesome, it was beautiful, and then it broke or was not usable like it was before. So like a time in your life when maybe you were a kid and you had your favorite, you know, toy or something, and then it got broken. You know, how did that devastate you? You know, get people to share things in their life that is lighthearted, so you're not like talking about major losses like a death of a loved one or something like that. So I'd stay away from heavy topics because you don't want to start a group that way. So I would lighthearted enough, but still like you want to hit that emotion of like something that was good but then got broken.
Well, for instance, could be then what's the favorite thing you've ever made? That'd be a good question, right?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
ask them,
yeah,
have you ever made something like that you're most proud of?
And then your
somebody
sister
else
broke it.
Break it, yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
What happened to your Lego creation?
Your
Yeah.
pastor crushed it on stage.
Oh, that was only one time, Mike. One time. It was a great illustration.
Yeah, my son loved that though. He felt special.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, you're trying to tie together in your icebreakers what we're going to be going into. So we're going to be going into the devastation of the fall and the impact that has had, and ever since we still live with it, right?
Yeah.
So you want to think of an icebreaker that's fun, gets everyone talking, but yet kicks off that kind of heavy topic of something that was awesome, but then it lost, you know,
Got
its
broke.
luster. Yeah.
And I would say too, this is just practical, kind of just basic human psychology stuff, but most people will engage more at an icebreaker level and just kind of getting things going and priming the pump, getting the conversation started when they're not needing to necessarily immediately dive into reflecting and processing through something
Right.
or a concept. Really, the power is in reminiscing, right? So if you're recalling memories or experiences, something that just they can easily pull from and talk about,
Yeah.
like that's typically a better icebreaker.
Yeah,
to
think
start
of a
with.
time in your life when
Yeah,
you had something.
Right.
Like I remember when I was a
Tell a
little
story.
kid. When I was a little kid, Easter time, I was probably 7 years old, and my parents gave me a little stuffed rabbit, and I was so excited. So I ran next door to my neighbor, David, and I said, "Hey, look at my parents got me for Easter today." So that's nothing. We went to his backyard. There's a real rabbit that his parents gave him. I literally ran home crying. I was devastated.
That explains so much.
Yeah. I'm just getting started. You have no
We'll talk
idea.
some more
I
about
was
this,
a
Mike, after the podcast
I was a
is over.
twisted child.
Icebreakers, therapy. you know,
Yeah.
it's all-
It can be therapeutic.
one and the
It
same.
can be.
One and the same.
Yeah, but you know, you're just asking stories of like what was a great thing that
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
a bad turn.
Yeah.
Well,
Good.
and when you think about it, all of us from the time we're young, whether it's getting a toy or your first brand new car, and then you come out of the grocery store and there's a scratch. Everything that's new gets broken.
Right.
Right? There's a lot to dig into that.
Yeah.
I think that would be engaging and have them sense that visceral, you know, like, oh, you know, that one hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's certainly relatable.
Yeah.
So
Not quite as deep as why is there suffering in the world, you know, which you could go there, you know, and I imagine it is to try
Eventually,
to,
right?
But we're
Yeah.
trying to get the whole meta narrative in, right, without
Right.
Yeah,
going
so
deep in the
Too heavy.
weeds.
Yeah.
So, and you're trying to connect all four movements, but I always tell people when you get to the fall, don't rush too quickly to the solution and redemption. You really want people to feel the weight like this was bad. You know, this was a rebellion against God. Our world remains by and large in rebellion against God. That God did bring a redemptive plan, but let the weight of this sit, especially if you're discipling people who are not believers or new to Christianity or you know, a lot of people push back that we're really not all that bad anyway. Why do we need Christianity? We're not really all that broken. So just letting the fall and the brokenness and the rebellion against God, it's not really about doing bad things or doing good things. That's not what it's about. It's about knowing and loving God and responding to him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, versus being independent from him. So most people think of sin as just doing bad things and God's up there with a stick. It's like, it's more of living independently of him and his loving design for us. That's what sin is. It's twisting. God made us this beautiful creation and we bend it for our purpose. And I want to use it for this. I don't want to use it for that.
Yeah.
We're still trying to be wise in our own eyes. That's a theme in scripture throughout.
Well, and Mike, you've talked a lot, and we've talked on this podcast about the gospel implications. Well, the implications of the fall, to just park there for a minute is like, ouch, and
it's a negative ripple.
It's a negative ripple.
Yeah.
But, to really think deeply about it instead of just rushing. I like that, rushing to, but Jesus came, so it's all okay. Well, no, we still have to live with the implications of that fall, and with God, walk through it and in this broken world.
Right.
I think in the materials, I think you even talk about it's not just spiritual impact of the fall. It's the social, it's the psychological, it's the physical. All of those things were impacted by the fall.
Yeah, that chart that talks about the 4 different types of alienation. I always encourage people who are discipling others, just look at that chart together and have them read it, read through it with them. And what jumps out to you? Just ask them questions like, what jumps out to you from this? What word or phrase or something that really hits you personally? And that usually sparks good conversation, because then you get to the heart of where they're at, this psychological one really hits me, because it says that we're psychologically broken. We don't even know our own hearts. How can we know the heart of God or other people? Like, why, I put in the book that counseling is such a lucrative business because people don't know their own heart, right? They need to sit and talk to somebody else about trying to figure out what is going on inside. Because I'm so conflicted. And why do I do the things I do? Why do I not do the things I know I want to do? And so all that, Romans chapter 7 stuff that Paul gets into, why do I do the evil that I don't want to do? And that's some of the passages we have in this session is wrestling with that. It's like, why are we the way we are? Because we're in a state of rebellion against God. That's why humans are in the predicament that we're in. That's why we have those 4 types of alienation. And so, to let that, as we're discipling another person, have a whole week to just kind of let that settle in and think, reflect about the world that we live in and your own struggles within that and your family and other relationships. Because then when you get to redemption and full restoration, then that's where it picks back up in the hope, right? Because we don't stay here in the despair, because if this is how the story ends, in despair in the fall, then there is no hope, right? We can't move forward.
I don't know if you guys have ever watched a movie and the movie pretty well, and there's a part in the movie, as with most movies, where the hero or the protagonist is facing horrible situation or circumstances and going through something terrible, and it's the part in the movie where you're like, there's no hope, everything is lost,
right?
It's
Yes.
death, destruction, like horrible. And you've seen the movie enough where when you know it's coming, you skip that part. I don't know if you've ever done that. It's just me.
Just you,
You're
Brian.
like, I don't want to watch this right now. I don't want to go through the hardship.
Yes.
And it's interesting how when I do that, I don't appreciate the redemptive moment in the movie as much. Like it hits different. It doesn't
Right.
really hit at all.
Yeah.
Like you can't, when you don't go through the viewing of the hard part, you don't appreciate the deliverance and the redemption. So I think there's an element of that where in our world today, Mike mentioned Romans 7, and Paul's conclusion was, wretched man that I am, who will save me from this body of death? Right? That was the conclusion about him and his sin and fallen state, apart from the redemptive power of Christ. And a lot of us, I think there's a lot of people in the world today who have not taken the time to really reflect on their alienation from God, from even their knowledge of themselves, of other people, and what damage sin has caused. And they keep hitting skip on that part of things in their own mind. And so we can't really value and appreciate and even walk into a season of redemption and restoration that God has for us.
And I think I can, just speaking from experience, there are whole churches that press the fast forward button.
Right.
If you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
That they skip over the holiness of God. They skip over that who God is,
Right.
and what He represents, and our fallen nature just can't come together without a solution that only He can provide.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember reading a book by Clouden Townsend, and they were talking about that most churches have how really they're talking about how the gospel and the meta narrative of the Bible has gotten completely whacked out. And what they said, most churches have a three-part sermon that is God's good, you're bad, stop it. Which is not the gospel at all.
No, right.
It's not even close, but it's sort of true. Like, we needed a savior. We didn't need a religious leader. And we tend to, I think I had, underestimate the gravity of my own sin or brokenness. Like, well, I'm pretty good. I'm doing this and I can do that and whatever. But, for me, the older I get, the more, and it's useful. It's a useful pain to sit there for a minute and not rush on, not fast forward, because then you actually get the true gospel story, and it's not that three-part thing.
Yeah. Recognizing that there is a problem is important to the process, right? So the whole message of the gospel doesn't make sense without the problem. We don't want to start with the problem. So I always encourage people, do start with creation and why we were put here in the first place. Yeah. So don't start with the bad news. Start with good. So you look about it, all four of the movements, only one of them is bad news.
Right.
3 of the 4 are good news.
Yeah.
So this is an optimistic story, not a bad one. But let's not rush too quickly about the bad part, right? Because, even secular psychologists will say that people need to recognize that they have a problem before they can be helped.
Yeah.
Until you accept the fact that I've got this
You're right.
problem, there's no hope.
Yeah,
right?
in AA they say, alcoholism is the only disease that says I don't have it, right? And sin is the same way in us, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not just physical addictions. We're addicted to other things to save us, and it's the same way. And to take a minute in the bad part of the movie and really look at it, nobody likes to do that.
Well, they
but
say
it's God's story, right?
They say how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but it really has to want to change. Well, it needs to know that it needs to change, right?
Yes. So moving on from that,
I got more.
I know you do. Yeah, but even think through the process of communion, right? Breaking bread and remembering the sacrifice of Christ. That's why even at church, we oftentimes will take a moment where we're reflecting before we remember even the sacrifice that Christ made for us. We try to take a moment to reflect on the reason that sacrifice was necessary.
Yeah.
And specifically, even that day, that morning on the way to church, our attitudes and words to one another, and just how we fall short and the sin we still battle and will battle on a regular basis until we're transformed permanently, but it just wells up in you, that gratitude of this is not some abstract thing that we're remembering, that we're actually remembering what forgave that sin that I committed today. And only by the grace of Christ at the cross. And so I think reflecting on that it's important. It matters.
Yeah.
Not staying there and being in that place of the mindset
but not
of
rushing,
I'm a despicable,
but not
horrible
hitting
sinner.
the fast forward button.
Right. Yeah.
It's in order to grasp the whole story, you have to get this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To understand.
And like to your
big a
point,
deal it
John,
is.
there are churches, I would say, the more fundamentalistic churches focus on fall and redemption, like we were saying. Pray this prayer and you go to heaven. Whereas more progressive churches focus on you're made in God's image, you're awesome, you're beautiful, and then skip over fall and redemption and go right to restoration.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah,
like, hey,
okay.
now live into it, So I would say we want to avoid both of those two extremes on the pendulum of evangelicalism or Christianity in America. We want to be right in the gospel zone, right? So
Yeah.
don't go to those two extremes of, we don't have to talk about sin and repentance, or all we talk about is your sin and your repentance. It's like, well, it's not really about me in the first place.
And you can become really self-focused in
Yeah.
that place, which is a terrible place to,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and you're all focused on yourself, which is not good.
And the focus of the story is on God, what he's done, and the focus
Always.
of that story is Jesus
Yes.
and how he is. We talk about Adam and his sin, right? Well, Jesus is the new Adam, right? He recreates humanity, and we'll get into that next time in the next two sessions, because what happened at the fall was that the humanity that God had intended in the first Adam gets broken. It's still there. We still reflect that image, but we're not able fully to live into that. We're depraved. So John Calvin talked about total depravity. And what he didn't mean by that is that the image of God is completely removed and we're just totally 100% depraved in all ways. Total depravity just means that every aspect of our being, all those 4 alienations we talked about, every aspect of our being has depravity in it. It
Right.
got bent. It got
tainted.
twisted.
It's
It
like-
didn't get removed.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't get destroyed. It just got twisted. And
deformed a
deeply,
little bit.
it got deeply affected. And so we are totally depraved in the sense that we can't do God's perfect intended will for our lives without him stepping into the story. And that's what we're going to get into next time.
So before we leave, this is more of just a broad Socratic teaching method question. Let's say you're in a group and it's real important that they grasp, for example, the fall, and they're just not getting it. Now, that's probably a reflection partly on my teaching style, but is there ever a time when you're using the Socratic method that you would maybe hint towards the answer or give the answer and then circle back around to help folks get that epiphany themselves?
I really try to avoid that as much as possible.
Okay.
I try to summarize what other people have said and putting it together into like a mosaic, listening to the different bits and pieces of what people are saying, and then maybe rephrasing it, what they've said a little bit more clearly so that does paint the picture better. But I try to resist the temptation to insert brand new information that other people haven't said or that the book hasn't given. So like I've said before, sometimes just go back and reread. If you think they're not getting this part, we'll go back and reread that part,
Okay.
So if they're not getting it, it's partially because the information, maybe you haven't read enough together, or maybe they didn't do the reading. They said they read, but they really didn't,
I would say too, John, I think if the question is they don't seem to be getting it, a lot of times they may get the concept or the idea and the truth behind what is being discussed. But I think what you're talking about too is how sometimes it doesn't make that, what is the 18-inch journey, right?
Yeah.
From here to
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And so also finding ways, even Socratically, to ask questions that get them thinking about themselves. And the heart work that the Lord still needs to do with them. So let's take this concept and idea and actually steer it back around into your own life, and how do we see this played out in your life, and try to guide the conversation that way as well.
Cool.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Go lead Socratically.
Okay. Thanks again for joining us on this podcast designed to offer teaching tips for session 2 out of the book God's Story. We'll dive into session 3 next time. Until then, God bless you guys.